There is a person you haven't spoken to in years. Maybe it's someone who left without explanation. Maybe it's someone who said one sentence that rewired something inside you. Maybe it's someone you would never admit still crosses your mind, but they do, and you can't make it stop. You've tried, you've told yourself to move on. You've had the conversation 100 times in your head, the version where you say exactly the right thing. You've replayed the moment it all fell apart so many times that you can feel the temperature of that room. And still, your brain goes back. Still, some random Tuesday morning, their face shows up uninvited. This isn't weakness. This isn't obsession. This is something far older than you are. And once you understand what's actually happening inside your skull, you will never look at your own mind the same way again. Your brain is not a storage device. It doesn't record experiences the way a camera records footage. It does something far stranger. It assigns weight. Every time something happens to you, your brain runs a rapid, mostly unconscious calculation. How much does this matter for your survival? The answer determines how deeply that memory gets encoded, how easily it gets retrieved, how hard it is to let go. Psychologist Martin Seligman spent decades studying why negative experiences stick harder than positive ones. What he found was not a glitch, it was a feature. Your ancient ancestors lived in a world where one missed threat could end everything. One moment of carelessness near a predator, one wrong read of a stranger's intentions, one failure to remember who had hurt you before, any of these could be fatal. The brain that survived was not the one that remembered pleasure most clearly. It was the one that never forgot danger. This is called negativity bias, and it is woven into the architecture of your nervous system. Neuroscientist Rick Hansen put it plainly. The brain is like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones. You can have 20 good things happen in a day. One bad interaction, one cold look, one careless word, and that is what you carry home. Now think about what another person can represent to your nervous system. Someone who hurt you is not just a memory. They are a threat signal that was never resolved. And unresolved threat signals don't fade. They repeat. Your hippocampus, the part of your brain that handles memory consolidation, works in partnership with your amygdala, the brain's threat detection center. When an experience carries emotional charge, especially fear, rejection, or betrayal, the amygdala flags it as high priority. The hippocampus encodes it with unusual depth. The neural pathway gets carved deeper than ordinary memories, and your brain, in its ancient logic, keeps that pathway active, not to torture you, to protect you, because something out there once signaled danger in the shape of that person, and until the threat feels resolved, your brain will not let you forget. This is why you rehearse. This is why you replay. Think about the last time you had an argument with someone that mattered to you. Not a stranger, someone close. After it ended, your brain almost certainly kept running simulations. You thought about what you should have said. You imagined their response. You rehearsed a different version of the conversation, one where you came out clearer or kinder or stronger. This is not neurosis. This is your prefrontal cortex trying to solve an open loop. Researcher Bluma Zeigarnik discovered something fascinating in the 1920s. She noticed that waiters in a busy cafe could recall every item from an incomplete order with perfect accuracy. The moment the order was fulfilled, they forgot it almost immediately. This became known as the Zeigarnik Effect. Your brain dedicates active, ongoing cognitive resources to unfinished tasks. It keeps them running in the background, available for retrieval until they are resolved. A relationship that ended badly is the ultimate unfinished task. There was no clean resolution, no satisfying conclusion, no moment where both people said everything they needed to say and walked away with full understanding. The loop never closed, and your brain, faithful and relentless, keeps that file open. This is especially true when the hurt came from someone you trusted. Betrayal by a stranger activates your threat response. Betrayal by someone close to you does something more complex. It activates grief, confusion, and threat simultaneously. Researcher John Gottman spent over 40 years studying human relationships and found that the deepest emotional injuries don't come from conflict. They come from what he called betrayal of the attachment bond, the rupture of a relationship where safety was assumed. When that ruptures, your brain doesn't just mark the person as a threat. It marks the entire category of closeness as potentially dangerous. And then it keeps returning to the source of the rupture, trying to understand it, trying to build a model that makes it survivable next time. You are not weak for doing this. Your brain is doing exactly what it was built to do. It is trying to extract the lesson from the wound. But here is the cruel irony. The very act of replaying the memory strengthens it. Every time you return to that moment, every time you run the simulation, rehearse the argument, imagine the confrontation, you are re-encoding the memory. You are carving that neural pathway even deeper. You are, in the language of neuroscience, reconsolidating the experience, not just remembering it, but rebuilding it. And each rebuild makes the next retrieval slightly easier, slightly more automatic. This is why years can pass, and one song, one smell, one passing resemblance on a crowded street can bring someone back with the force of something that happened yesterday. You haven't been haunted by the person. You have been rehearsing them, unintentionally, involuntarily, but faithfully. Your brain is also doing something else you may not have considered. It is running an identity check. Psychologist Jennifer Freed developed trauma betrayal theory and found that when someone close to us causes serious harm, the mind struggles not just with the hurt, but with the question of who you are in relation to that hurt. Were you naive? Were you unlovable? Were you someone who could be treated that way? These are not idle questions. Your brain treats them as survival critical because your identity, your stable model of who you are in the social world, is the foundation of every future decision you will make about who to trust, how close to let people get, and how much to protect yourself. Until that identity question is answered, the loop stays open. Until you have a coherent story about what happened that accounts for both what they did and who you are, your brain keeps returning to the source material. This is also why time by itself does not heal. What heals is meaning making. Researcher James Pennebaker found across dozens of studies that people who wrote about their most painful experiences, not just describing the events, but exploring their meaning, their causes, their emotional texture, showed measurable improvements in immune function, mood, and cognitive clarity. The act of constructing a narrative, of putting language around what happened, appears to close the loop in a way that simply waiting does not. You're not trying to forget, you're trying to understand. And once the understanding is deep enough, the brain stops flagging the person as an unresolved threat. But here is the thing you may be sitting with right now. Understanding why your brain does this doesn't stop it from doing it. Knowing about the Zeigarnik Effect doesn't close the loop. Knowing about negativity bias doesn't switch it off. You can read every study ever written about rumination and still lie awake at 2 a.m. running the simulation one more time. Because your brain is not a machine you operate. It is a system you live inside. And it evolved long before you had the language to name what it was doing. What you can do, what research consistently points toward, is change your relationship, not suppression, because suppression strengthens the signal, not distraction, because distraction just delays the replay. Something closer to what psychologist Stephen Hayes calls diffusion, the practice of observing the thought without becoming it, noticing that the simulation is running without boarding the train, acknowledging that your brain has flagged this as unresolved, and then gently, repeatedly, returning your attention to something present. It doesn't close the loop immediately, nothing does immediately, but it begins to change the weight your brain assigns to the retrieval. It begins to reclassify the thought from active threat to acknowledged memory, and slowly, over time, the file stops demanding to be opened every day. There is one more thing worth knowing. The person in your mind is not really the person who hurt you. It is your brain's model of them, assembled from memory, from interpretation, from the emotional residue of every moment you shared. That model is real to your nervous system, but it is not them. It is you trying to make sense of them. And that means the resolution you are searching for is not something they can give you. It never was. It is something your own mind has to build. Tonight, if a thought shows up uninvited, you'll know what it is. Not a sign that you are broken, not proof that you haven't moved on. It is your ancient, loyal, imperfect brain doing the only thing it knows how to do with an open wound. It is trying to understand. It is trying to protect you. It has been doing this since long before you had the words to ask it to stop.